why most people stay average, and how to break out at some point in life. Usually in the quiet moments no one talks about, a thought appears that is both uncomfortable and honest. Is this really all there is? Not because your life is terrible, not because everything is falling apart, but because something deeper feels missing, something unnamed, something that doesn't scream but whispers, telling you that you are living below your potential, that your days blurred together, and that comfort has slowly replaced curiosity. And the most unsettling part is this: most people never ask that question at all. They don't stay average because they are incapable. They stay average because average feels safe. Think about this for a moment. Average requires no explanation. Average requires no courage. Average allows you to blend in, to avoid judgment, to avoid risk, and most importantly, to avoid responsibility for becoming more. Napoleon Hill called this drifting, the unconscious habit of allowing life to push you wherever it wants, accepting inherited beliefs, social expectations, and emotional habits without ever questioning whether they align with who you truly are. Drifting does not feel dangerous. It feels comfortable. And that is exactly why it works. Carl Jung believed that the greatest danger to the human psyche is not suffering, but unconsciousness. Because when a person lives without awareness, their life is shaped by forces they do not understand: fear, conditioning, collective norms, and they mistake this for choice. Most people believe they are choosing their lives. In reality, they are repeating patterns, patterns taught by family, patterns reinforced by culture, patterns rewarded by society. And here's what no one tells you: staying average is rarely a failure of ambition. It is a failure of awareness. Friedrich Nietzsche warned that when people abandon the difficult task of creating their own values, they adopt the values of the crowd, and in doing so, trade depth for acceptance, authenticity for comfort. Average is not neutral. Average is a decision often made unconsciously, to avoid standing out, to avoid inner conflict, to avoid the responsibility of becoming something undefined. Alan Watts once observed that society trains people to live for approval rather than experience, teaching them how to perform roles rather than inhabit their own existence. And when life becomes performance, growth becomes threatening. Now ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you felt truly challenged by your own life? Not stressed, not busy, but challenged in a way that demanded growth, because average life is full of activity, but very little transformation. Viktor Frankl believed that meaning arises not from pleasure or comfort, but from responsibility, from taking ownership of one's unique task in the world. And without meaning, people default to distraction. Distraction becomes a substitute for purpose. Routine becomes a substitute for intention. Comfort becomes a substitute for fulfillment. And slowly, quietly, a person wakes up years later wondering where their energy went, where their dreams went, where they went. But here's the truth. Beneath the truth, people don't stay average because they lack potential. They stay average because they are afraid of what happens if they don't. Carl Jung spoke about the fear of individuation, the fear of becoming distinct, separate, whole, because it often means disappointing others, leaving familiar identities behind, and facing parts of yourself that have been dormant or suppressed. To break out of average living is not just to work harder, it is to become more conscious. Napoleon Hill emphasized that every major life shift begins with a decision, not a wish, not a hope, but a conscious commitment to stop drifting and start directing thought, attention, and behavior. And this is where most people hesitate, because directing your life means you can no longer blame circumstances. You can no longer hide behind excuses. You can no longer pretend you didn't know better. Now pause here. Think about this for a moment. What part of your life is operating on autopilot right now? What habits are you repeating simply because they are familiar? What dreams feel distant, not because they are impossible, but because they would require discomfort? Breaking out does not begin with grand gestures. It begins with noticing. Noticing when you numb instead of engage. Noticing when you choose ease over growth. Noticing when you silence the inner voice that asks for more. Alan Watts would remind us that awareness itself is transformative, that simply seeing the pattern begins to loosen its grip. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that self-overcoming, the continual act of rising beyond one's current limitations, is the essence of a meaningful life, and that stagnation is the true form of decay. Viktor Frankl would say that meaning is not something you find once, but something you respond to daily, through choices, attitudes, and responsibility. So how do you break out? You stop waiting for motivation. You stop waiting for clarity. You stop waiting for permission. You begin by choosing discomfort with awareness over comfort with numbness. Carl Jung believed that growth happens when consciousness expands to include what was previously avoided, and every time you lean into discomfort instead of escaping it, you reclaim energy that was locked in fear. Napoleon Hill would say that focused thought, consistently applied, reshapes identity. You become what you repeatedly choose. An average living thrives on unconscious repetition. Exceptional living grows from conscious interruption. Interruption of habits, interruption of beliefs, interruption of narratives that tell you to stay small, stay quiet, stay safe. This does not mean abandoning your life. It means inhabiting it fully. It means asking deeper questions. It means aligning actions with values rather than convenience. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, life begins to feel different. Not easier, but more alive, more honest, more yours. Because breaking out is not about becoming better than others. It is about becoming more yourself, fully, responsibly, deliberately. And the moment you stop drifting even slightly, the current of your life changes direction. If this message spoke to you, subscribe to Becoming You and keep growing with us. And if you watched until the end, comment the word clarity and share your thoughts below. Because awareness is where the average life ends and the conscious life begins.